Hello, everyone. I am Manuel Gonzalez. I am the PR Communications Chairperson for InnEdCO this year. We're joined by Kelly Sane and Jessica Riley from DPS, and Kelly's from Boulder Valley. And we're excited to have you guys here tonight. We're taking a moment of your precious time, and we're very grateful for you to join us for a very brief webinar here to discuss how to design an effective session for our InnEdCO Conference 2015. One of the things that I know that we've all experienced as participants is being in that classroom or the session where it's a sit and get, and sometimes it can be rather boring. You know, it all depends obviously on the presenter, but what we want to do this year is really try to engage our participants. You know, I know many sessions where I go into and I leave that session just feel fully energized and just thinking, wow, I got to participate. I wasn't just an active listener. And so, you know, we kind of hope for that same experience for our students. And so this is a great opportunity for us to model that to all the educators that are coming to InnEdCO 15 this year. And real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and let our other two participants in this webinar introduce themselves. I'll turn it over to you, Kelly.
So I'm Kelly Sane. I'm the Director of EdTech in Boulder Valley, but I serve as the pre-conference chair for the Google and Education Academy and the Leadership Academy. And this is round 2 of our how to design an effective session for InnEdCO. We had an event yesterday, but it was just kind of held between Ben, myself, and Kim, because we had it on our calendars as the 15th, and even though we all looked at the stuff that we sent out to you, it went out as the 16th. So I apologize ahead of time for all of you, and thank you for those of you who are coming today. So I'm going to let Jessica join us because Ben is unable to join us, and Kim is in Cabo. So I don't think that's very fair that she's there when it's snowing here in Denver. But I'm going to let Jessica introduce herself because we've asked her to be with us as well.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm Jessica Raleigh. I work in Denver Public Schools in personalized professional learning. And I apologize if there's some background noise. I am in a Starbucks because of the snow and some earlier meetings that I needed to go to. So I pulled up at a Starbucks, and hopefully everyone can hear me okay. But I'm just really excited to be here talking about something that I'm really passionate about, which is really awesome facilitations of professional development. And I'm also an InnEdCO participant and facilitator, and it's absolutely my favorite thing to do every single year. It's an amazing experience. So if this is your first year going to InnEdCO, you will not be disappointed. It's going to be really, really amazing up at Keystone this year. So thanks for inviting me, Kelly.
My pleasure. I didn't want to do this just by myself, so I'm really glad that we have Manny and Jessica for us. So Manny, if you want to go ahead on to our next slide. So what we're hoping for is we're really hoping that you have an opportunity where this is a hands-on learning conference and an event for you. And we always talk about choosing with your feet and making sure that all of our attendees and presenters are very active versus being talked at in front of the room and that sit and get philosophy. Manny already kind of talked about that, but we all know that when we are actively engaged, we are going to remember more than if we are passively receiving. So that is our goal, is to really focus on that this year. And we've given you lots of different tools and strategies and ideas for how that's going to look. So what I would love is to also highlight at the bottom of every single one of these presentations today, we have a bit.ly, and that is our back channel. And so instead of a Q&A session, we have a back channel within our documents, and if you wanted to be able to share your thinking in here or ask any questions, we'd love to be able to see that as well. And hopefully between Jessica, myself, and Manny, we can look at that back channel as well. And did anyone else want to add into that?
So I think that's a great segue into the next slide, actually, Kelly, which is to really think about what are those opportunities that we have to really challenge the learning that's going on, and to just kind of think about, like, what are your session types first and foremost. And so I know that you have that link there for tip number 1 to just kind of think about all those different session types. But I think as a facilitator this year, it was really, really wonderful to see those different types called out in there. It was very helpful as I was sort of thinking through what things I wanted to do within my session.
And you may not even remember what you signed up for because that was a long time ago that everyone signed up to present, and thank you so much for doing that. So definitely go back and review what you agreed to do and making sure that that session fits into that type. So if you're doing an Ignite session, it's very quickly. If you're doing a lecture, yes, you would be standing in front of people, but still figure out ways in which to make this interactive. And so our participants look at the session type and choose accordingly. So make sure that you're paying attention to what session you've agreed to do and try and make that possible. So Jess, I think you've got the next one.
Yeah, so I think in addition to looking at those session types, it's also important to go back, like you said, it's been a long time, and so look at your session description, look at the outcomes that you put in there. There were some really great questions in the form this year about how are you going to engage participants in a workshop style, or in those conversations, which really should be very participant driven. And so I think going back and looking at that information is really great. And then also just really think about how am I modeling really, really great teaching and learning in the things that I'm doing within my session. And just ask yourself, what are the big questions that I can pose to participants so that they can really achieve those outcomes? I think a lot of times we get really excited about sharing all of our knowledge, but we also have so much great knowledge in the room. And so it's an opportunity for people to really think about those questions, talk with one another about it, connect on the things that they're doing in their schools and their districts, and then also getting people to have that time and space to reflect. So 5-10 minutes is really a good amount of time of you talking, and then make sure you're building in those opportunities for people to talk to one another. And like you pointed out earlier, Kelly, even just a Google Doc back channel is a really great place to do that. You could do a Padlet, you can use Today's Meet. There are so many great tools out there. If you're not sure what the right tool is, ask around, ask some people in your school or in your community, this is the session I'm doing and I want to have a back channel. Even Twitter or a Google Plus community are great places to have those opportunities for people to really stop, process the things they're learning, reflect. And one of my favorite things about having that back channel is that it's like a really amazing turn and talk. The person you really want to talk to might not be sitting next to you in the session. They might be across the room. They might even be in a different state, and they're kind of following along on Twitter in those conversations with the hashtags. So provide opportunities for your participants to really talk amongst themselves and, find those times where they can really be processing and then also implementing, using what it is they're learning. We don't want the whole session to just be us, putting ideas out there and then them having to wait until the fall to really implement them. So give them an opportunity to kind of try things out, talk to one another, and get that idea generation going on. And think about the ways that you can really personalize that learning for the participants. So providing lots of opportunities for them to make choices about what's most relevant to their learning, what they need for their learning style. Some people, talking to the person next to them is a lot scarier than talking to someone on Twitter, or vice versa. So just kind of think about how you're meeting all those different needs at the same time.
I love that thinking. So our next tip number 3, is to really think about working in triads. So the first thing that you have to think about is how do you explain or walk through whatever you're trying to demonstrate. So if you're talking about blogging, how do you walk through how to create your own blog? And then you look at the next part, which is that exercise. Have everyone try to do what you have just described so they can go through that process, create it, and that means they're actively engaged. And the third piece is to debrief. Really lead that discussion and talk about how you would use this. I think a lot of times when we're looking at sessions, people do the first two, the explain and the exercise, but they don't get into the debrief. You have a lot of individuals in your session who are from different grade levels. They're from different districts. They have different experiences. They may have different content areas. So you have to talk about how this is relevant from a kindergarten teacher all the way up to an administrator, whoever would be attending. So take that time and share that. Some of the most valuable things that I've learned has been that opportunity to visit with someone, and some of the debriefing is just what didn't work the first time I did it, what was my epic fail, and how can I learn from that. And that's really important that you take that time to go through each one of these. I guess to me a really good idea is if I have a 45-minute session, what I would want to start with maybe is 10 minutes for the walkthrough explain, maybe 30 minutes for you to actually exercise and do it, and maybe another 10 minutes for a debrief. And then that way you're getting all those pieces in, so you're hopefully hitting all of those learners. Anyone else want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think that goes right into the next tip, which is tip number 4, and really thinking about who is the audience that you are working with, and just thinking about sort of why people come to InnEdCO and to these sessions, one of the things that you hear people say all the time is that a really amazing conference, their takeaways are the people who they've met and the opportunities that they've had to connect and network with one another. And especially this is such a special conference where the majority of people there are people who are educators in Colorado. And so they're our neighbors. And to be able to foster those connections that we have with one another is like the most amazing thing about the week that we spend now in Keystone. And I think so as facilitators we can also help that, because Kim made a really good point last night on the Hangout, which was that this is the first time that a lot of these people are meeting one another, and that can be really a tricky social situation for someone to sort of jump into a conversation or introduce themselves to a new group of people. And so just you're sort of the bridge, is how Kim put it, and I really liked that you're even just your demeanor, the way that you greet people, the way that you open up those opportunities for people and encourage them to connect, encourage them to take care of their own needs as learners, and to really make sure that they are taking ownership of that experience and making it what they need it to be. As a facilitator, that's a lot of responsibility that you have, but it's one of the most powerful things when you have people coming up to you afterwards and just saying how much they appreciated that. And so just think about how you're sort of building that opportunity in throughout the session, and then also thinking about how you can really make people comfortable with giving that feedback and with providing feedback to one another. And as much as we have knowledge and expertise in these topics that we're presenting about, there's so much knowledge in the room too. And so really get them talking, get them sharing the things that they're doing, because those are the connections that will last so much longer than that hour or two that you're sitting in the room together.
One of the cool things I like about our conference is that there is that collaboration time built in through a long lunch and through, we're all staying up there together. So it's not like we go home after the event. And it really is important that you're focusing on the attendees are the most important, just like you focus on your students are the most important in your classroom. The same thing here is the attendee, not you as the presenter. Although we are incredibly happy that you are presenting, because we can't do this without any of you.
Also, one thing to consider too, when the focus is on the attendee, is to also we have that kind of this kind of foundation of knowing that's kind of what we're after. That helps you kind of also realize we have a lot of people. This is their first time, possibly at an EdTech conference, that their knowledge and understanding that it's okay to use Twitter as a professional learning network, those type of things. You're going to have those beginners, if you will, in there, and just being able to help them along. Just like if you have a student that may be kind of slower than the rest of your group, understand they're just as important as the rest of the group and making them feel included. And that really helps, I think, also have foster a really good community, and it's something that hopefully encourages them to come back and continue doing this, and essentially builds up the community.
For all of us who continue to come back every year, we know that there is that community, and I kind of refer to InnEdCO as summer camp. I get to come back and see all the people that I haven't seen in a while since the last summer camp. And so I think what I loved about both of you and how you shared this information is one of the first things that you could start as a presenter is just to ask who's in the room. Are there elementary, are there middle school, are there high school, are they leaders? Is this their first time ever looking at this? Have they never even thought about this tool, or have they done this before and they could share expertise? Those are the first questions that I usually ask, because then you know who is in your room, and then you can change your presentation for that appropriate audience.
Yeah, and I think that also goes back to that back channel conversation, which is, if you have a collaborative Google Doc or a place where people can be having that conversation, one, it's a great way to get them all into that place initially, because you do have some people that they may not have used that tool before, they may need a little assistance, and so, I usually put it up on the board before the presentation even starts and say, here's our doc, here's the links you need, help one another. I'll usually, a few minutes before we start, you've got a lot of people in the room already, and so I'll say, hey, this is where we're starting, and then sometimes I even put the question right in there, like, who are you and why are you here? Because like you said, Kelly, that helps me as a facilitator to really take that session where the audience needs it to be, not where I think it should go. And you do have people who have been going to the conference for years and years and years, and people who are new, and some people who are really gung-ho about technology, and some who, I remember my first InnEdCO, I had been told, you're going to be one-to-one Chromebooks next year, go to InnEdCO, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I have to learn. So it can also be overwhelming, so the more you can just foster that comfortability, the better.
Wonderful. And so that brings us into our tip number 5, which is basically just to practice and be prepared. I know that there are many different opportunities between now and InnEdCO that you could probably present at your own staff, that you could present in front of your grade level. So here's my shameful plug. If you would like to go to Innovative Digital Innovative Learning Day in Boulder on April 25th, you could present there. There's lots of different opportunities. I know the Highway 21 conference is coming up. Lots of opportunities for you to practice and be prepared so that you are not nervous about this event, but you can just change it on the fly based upon who is in your session and how that conversation and those opportunities for engagement are moving. So it's really important that you take that time, because what you don't want is people to say that was way too easy or that was way too hard, and that the individual really kind of didn't know what was going on and they had a lot of different wrinkles going on in their presentation. So just practice and be prepared, and then you'll be wonderful in your presentation.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, people aren't really sure what the opportunities are for them to practice. So even just gathering a few of your colleagues after school and saying, hey, I would really love to kind of go through this, presentation that I'm doing. Would you come and sort of be my participants? Because so many times people would love to learn from us anyway, and it gives us a good opportunity to just practice. So don't be afraid to sort of just send out an email to your colleagues and say, I'm going to be after school at this time, kind of going through my session, and I would love for you to come and join me and learn together. And you'll be surprised how many people will take you up on it.
So I always used to love doing it in front of my middle school students, and I'd say, this is what I'm going to do for a group of teachers. And it was hysterical, some of the comments that they had, because they would notice things that maybe you were missing, or this is how you can be more fun, and Mrs. saying you're being too serious. And so sometimes you can use your students as an example as well. They'd come up with really creative examples to add in there that show the expertise in your own room and how you've applied this. So our next tip is just to really be focused on making sure that you actually have some sort of outcome, a learning outcome. So it could be skills-based or it could be learning processed. What I mean by that, by skill-based, is let's say you're trying to teach someone how to do Twitter, then of course the skill is by the time you're done you have competency and understanding in how you would use Twitter to increase your professional learning network. One part of what we hope you accomplish in your session. The other one is really that learning process. How can I understand and through conversations and maybe some design thinking or just collaborations, how does this apply to my classroom? How does it apply to my school district? How does it apply to my learning? So it's not just one or the other. Sometimes when I've gone to sessions, we focus too much on the skill and not enough about how it's applied. And I think both of those need to be a flow inside your session, so that individuals who maybe already have the skill but are looking for examples of how to use it, or those who didn't have the skill but can very easily think of how that can be incorporated into their curriculum. Anyone else want to add to that one?
Something that I am guilty of oftentimes is wanting to put too much out there, because if I am teaching a skill, even if it's something like exposing people to Twitter, there are so many things that you want to share with people. And so a lot of times what I'll do is almost think of it as like developing an online course. And so my Google Doc will actually have the whole facilitation, and it will have all those sort of multiple pathways, so that if someone already knows how to use a tool for one purpose, they can kind of jump ahead and use it for a different purpose while you're working with the people who need help. It's the same thing you do in your classroom of really setting up all of your students to be successful. And that way they also have something that they can take away with them. So if they forget what the process is, or they only got through the first 2 steps, but they want to kind of go back and continue to look at that over the summer, they have all of that learning available to them, even though you're not there in the room with them anymore. So you can also sort of put some of those things into your Google Docs or your other materials and resources. We have those great folders this year that you can put all of your resources in as a facilitator. So if you have things that you're sharing with people, definitely dump them into there as well, so that people can almost have their own learning roadmaps once they've left the conference.
All right, so that actually brings us to something that I'm incredibly excited about, which is what everything is going to look like for you as a presenter. And Manny, inside here we kind of have some different ideas for how you could access your different information. So if I look at first of all, let's just start populating. I mean, this was such an exciting session tonight, and it's take number 2. So we got to talk about the hashtag and really get people excited about coming to InnEdCO. We do have a lot of individuals already registered, but we could still use your leadership and your ability to spread the word so that we can get more people at our conference. and make it the best one we've had so far. If you look at the Zarista app, there's some really amazing things. We have the same app as we did last year, so if you're already a presenter before, this will be familiar to you. One of the things that we already have is a session feedback. We really would like every single person to use this session feedback form. Something that we have always done in the past is have this information, but this year we are going to be able to give to all of you as presenters your information about your session after InnEdCO. And after we've had a little bit of time to relax, we will work together and get all this information to you. But this helps us. We like data. All of us who are doing presentations like to look at and see, what things that we need to improve on, how can we get better at this process. So definitely highlight that session feedback, even if you need to end a couple minutes early so that you could ask everybody to do that, because not only is it valuable to us in InnEdCO who look at this information, but it's incredibly valuable to you as a presenter for your own growth and your own development and your own knowledge of how things went for the learners in your room. The other thing is, if we click on the click here to view session resources, this gives you an opportunity. All of you have your own folder inside Google Drive, and you can upload all of your information in there. The cool thing about this is once you've gone through all of the sessions that we have, will allow you to see every single session within InnEdCO, and it's all going to be inside your drive. So if by chance you missed Jessica's amazing session, you could go back in and look at her information. And then that way you are taking the learning from everybody who's attended. So you as a presenter, who some of you are presenting multiple times, will still be able to get information from the individuals who are presenting their session. So I'm really excited about that information as well. Anybody else want to add into that?
Something else that I really like using the app for, and this was so wonderful to have access to last year, is that inevitably I'll have an amazing conversation with somebody after a session or in the hallway, and I just won't remember what their name was and how to contact them, or I didn't write down their Twitter handle right. Something will go awry, and so being able to go back in there and see who was in the session or see who the presenters were and connect with them afterwards. Definitely think it's important too that you encourage people, and that you also know as an attendee, don't be afraid to ask people questions after the fact or to connect with them online. They're more than happy to have those conversations. It's something that's, again, really special about InnEdCO, is that you can walk up to someone during lunch, at dinner, when you see them at the events, and you can just say, hey, I was in this session and I really would love to talk to you more about this, or could we set up a time to talk over the summer? And people really love being able to help and extend that learning, so don't be shy about connecting with one another and reaching out to people using the app and the contact info that's in there.
One thing too about the app that we look back after last year's conference is, do people actually use it? And the analytics behind it were outstanding. A lot of that too is because we use the app to tell people of some of our contests and prizes. So the app is the central kind of the central part of InnEdCO in terms of communications. And so because it's so critical for our communication, it's a great benefit to all the presenters to use this, to add the resources there and rely on that. And just like Jessica said, it's great even after the conference is done, so you can still have those communications open with everyone throughout the conference.
So what's really cool is when you guys are now working on your presentation, because I always get mine done 3 months before I have to present, but when you're working on your presentation, go ahead and jam that stuff in there right now if you have that opportunity, because then individuals can kind of help make some decisions right now. And especially if you're new to InnEdCO, and if any of your attendees are brand new, this will be important for them. You may even have to show them where some of these resources are, because they may not be as familiar with the app as you are as a presenter. So any help that you can have to the attendees on this and all the possibilities that are there will really help their experience as well.
I love that point, Kelly, about putting things in there ahead of time. So many times I'm in a PD session and someone will pull up even just their slides. I think, if you have slides that you're using, or you're using other sort of presentation materials, throw those in there as well, because there's nothing worse than when you get halfway through a presentation and you've been furiously taking notes, and then someone says, hey, don't take notes, I'll put all of this up after the fact. And you're like, oh, if I only had that ahead of time, I could have taken notes in there, I would have had access to all this. And that is actually really distracting for learners to be taking notes and keeping track. And so the more things you can take off their plate and provide it to them ahead of time, so they can really be digging in with the learning, the more engaged that they'll be in that session.
And then everyone will start to trust that the resources are there. So if we model that ourselves as presenters, then it will be really important for the attendees to understand that those resources are there for them. All right, so I think that was the last tip. So where we got most of our information was from these resources in OETC, and I know that we have this information for you on the last Hangout that we did yesterday. So I'm kind of excited about looking at where we got this information from, and there's lots of resources in there. So Manny, do you want to advance to our next page? That would be awesome. Thank you. And inside OETC, you can see some different resources that are available. Oh, this shows you, never mind. This shows you that Ben's already created some amazing stuff in here, and Ben, you weren't here. So this shows you all of our pieces inside. Every single session has their own folder inside Google Drive, so everyone can add it, and if you click on Add to Drive at the bottom, you will have every single one of those resources. I'm clearly not talking as long as Ben would have been talking.
One of the other things that's great about these folders too is that if you're in a session, you can add things to the folders as well. So if you have a resource that you want to add to the learning, it's really awesome that you'll be able to everybody can crowdsource and contribute to those things that are there for people to take a look at.
So as Manny gets through all of our different collaborative resources, the last piece that we wanted to talk to you about was those resources within OETC. And hopefully we can let you see some of those links, and you can go through that information, and you can see where we found a lot of the information for this presentation tonight, as well as the last piece, which is just additional keys and resources for you in any kind of information about what type of session you could model, maybe some presentation techniques, and some ideas as you, as a presenter, are looking at that information.
Kelly, you know, maybe, so that folder's in this section here?
If you go to the go to your next tab over, and just go back to the presentation. Yep, and keep on going to the next slide. Oops, sorry. Go to slide, there. So if we're inside OETC, this is where you can look for some information and some additional facilitation guides. Both of those are in the last. So before we leave, what I would love to be able to do to everybody is just to thank them, because this conference does not happen without every single one of you. We have over 200 and some presentations, and there is no way that all of us could do it as a board, so we're really excited that we are sharing our expertise and creating our leadership. Jessica, what else did you want to be able to add?
Yeah, I just am so excited when I look through the schedule and I see all of the different people who are going to be there, and I see people who I recognize, and I see new names and faces, and just the variety of sessions that are going to be offered this year. And I really love that, you know, the conference is starting to take this really positive turn towards just really amazing teaching and learning. You know, it's so fun to come together and just talk about the things that are working in our districts, and like you mentioned earlier, the things that we failed miserably at, and we can learn from each other. Like, that's so valuable to do that together, and to just sort of support one another in that community. I think it's also really great that we have, you know, that there will be an amazing unconference room again this year. And so if there's something that's not on the session schedule, but you strike up a great conversation, or it's just something you want to talk about, you can head in there, you can put that on the board. And so all those conversations that happen outside of the formal sessions are just as amazing. And so just, you know, take advantage of those as both a facilitator and an attendee, and really just soak up as much as you can from the people who are there.
So what I heard you say, Jessica, was the ability for you as a learner to kind of customize your own learning. So just as we as presenters want to customize what's happening for our attendees, you have the opportunity to not only present, but to customize what type of learning you would like to receive. So definitely we thank all of you for being here tonight, and I don't think it was a lot of people, but that's okay. And Jessica, thank you so much, and Manny, thank you so much for joining us at the last minute as we prepared for our OK to Play, OK to Fail, which is one of the sessions that we are hosting in Boulder. And we kind of failed yesterday with the wrong date, but we're really excited to have everyone here and know that we will have an amazing conference at Keystone this year.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I'm super excited.
All right, maybe it won't snow up there, right, like it is today?
I was hoping.
All right, Manny, do you have anything else to say before we exit?
Yeah, I'm just saying thank you for everyone's time. I think the thing that this year I'm looking forward to most is the fact that presenters have a new Ignite session that they're having there. I think it's going to be exciting for presenters. And also, I know that one of the things that was one of the biggest feedbacks that we got from presenters last year was the ability for presenters to see session feedback, and that's something that's going to be available. So every year we're trying to improve, and it's all based on your feedback, and I felt like these are two big things that were requested, and they're going to be available this year. So aside from a new location, I think it's going to be the best conference ever, and it's because of the presenters. Again, like Kelly said, without you guys, we don't have a conference. So thank you all for your time tonight, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Manny.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.